All right, so we've got this listener submission that's really kind of wild.
Yeah.
I mean, a 19-year-old hacker nicknamed Big Balls,
Okay.
possibly having a huge impact on major government decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's straight out of a movie, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly a headline that grabs your attention.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, the listener sent in this transcript from the Ring of Fire YouTube channel.
Right.
And they're talking about this individual and how they're maybe involved in these government efficiency initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
And then the YouTube video gets into some of the political reactions.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff.
It is.
So for this deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to try to get past the
hype.
Yeah, all the hype surrounding Big Balls and really try to get to the bottom of what's going on here.
Right.
What are the facts?
Mm-hmm.
What are the real questions that we should be asking?
Sure.
About how our government operates.
Yeah.
And how are people reacting to this from across the political spectrum?
That's a good point. We want to give our listeners a clear understanding without, overloading them with too much information.
Right, exactly.
So let's start by breaking down this big balls phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, as the YouTube analysis suggests, the media, that they might latch on to the name because it's so out there.
Oh, yeah.
But behind that sensationalism, what we really have is a very young individual, potentially in a position of authority in the government. And that could signal some major changes coming.
Yeah, and it's not just any government position, right?
Right.
We're talking about someone who could impact decisions that affect millions of people.
Exactly. Huge implications.
Yeah. And that raises the very fundamental question. Who's actually calling the shots?
It's a crucial question.
Absolutely.
And it's not just speculation. The transcript mentions a federal court trying to figure out who is actually in charge of this thing called Doge.
Doge.
Yeah. Apparently, the Department of Justice lawyers, they couldn't even give a cleared answer, which I think is really telling. I mean, if they can't even tell us who's running this thing,
Yeah.
it really suggests a lack of structure and oversight.
Right. So let's talk about Big Balls themselves.
Okay.
What do we actually know about what they're doing?
Well, according to the YouTube discussion, this person is involved in meetings where people have to justify their jobs.
Interesting.
And apparently, there have been firings based on the assessments made in these meetings.
Okay, so this 19-year-old is basically deciding who stays and who goes.
It seems that way.
Wow.
What's striking is the contrast between their age and their apparent authority.
Yeah.
And the transcript describes them as being very intelligent, especially in their area of expertise, which is hacking.
Hacking.
They're a trained hacker, according to the source.
Wow.
Yeah. And it gets even more interesting when you consider that they apparently spent 3 months working with Elon Musk's companies.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, in some kind of computer hacking role.
That connection to Musk is definitely intriguing.
It is. But there's also a darker side to this story.
Oh.
The transcript mentions serious allegations that Big Balls gave sensitive information to competitors of their previous employers.
Really?
And that this allegedly led to them being fired. So it raises questions about their judgment and whether they might have conflicts of interest in this new government role.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
So why bring someone with this kind of background into the government?
Well, the YouTube analysis suggests it's connected to this Doge initiative, which is being presented as a way to get rid of government inefficiency and update how the government works, for the new AI age.
So basically using technology to streamline things.
Exactly. It's about making the government more efficient.
Right.
And you can see why that would appeal to people, especially in this age of technology. Everyone wants things to be faster and more efficient.
Absolutely.
Doge, from what we understand, is a broad effort to overhaul how the government does things using modern technology, especially AI, like using automation and better data analysis.
So this new AI age is all about leveraging these technologies to make the government run better.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, this is where things get interesting from a political standpoint.
Okay.
The transcript mentions Lizard Man Carville predicting that Trump's about to politically fall apart.
Right. So that's one perspective on where things are headed politically. But the transcript also points out that there seems to be a lot of public support for making the government smaller and more efficient.
Yeah, and they even mentioned this hypothetical $5,000 payment to citizens as a result of these cuts.
Which could be a big motivator.
Absolutely. So it seems like there's this go Trump go sentiment out there, which suggests that maybe Carville's prediction of a downfall isn't quite accurate.
It seems like public opinion on this specific issue of government efficiency might be different from what Carville is suggesting.
Yeah, public opinion is always complex.
Well, it is.
So even if the public is generally in favor of a more efficient government,
Yeah.
What are the potential downsides here?
Yeah, it's the key question.
What about accountability?
Exactly.
Especially with someone like Big Balls involved.
Right. The transcript brings up some important risks. What happens when you have someone so young, maybe not fully subject to traditional government oversight, making big decisions about how the government functions?
It's a little scary when you think about it.
It is. The biggest concern seems to be the lack of transparency.
Yeah.
Who's really in charge? What safeguards are in place to prevent abuse of power? What are the consequences if mistakes happen?
Especially in places like the FBI, CIA, and NSA.
Right. Sensitive agencies.
Yeah, those are really high stakes.
And remember, the DOJ lawyers couldn't even tell us who was running Doge.
Right.
It's a huge red flag. It really suggests a lack of structure and oversight.
Absolutely.
It could be a recipe for chaos.
So even though the public likes the idea of efficiency, it sounds like there's not a lot of confidence in how this Doge initiative is being carried out.
The transcript really emphasizes that lack of a clear plan or leadership.
Okay.
And then you have Elon Musk's involvement,
Right.
which adds another layer of complexity.
Oh, yeah.
He's a special government employee,
Okay.
which is interesting in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But then the White House won't release his financial disclosures.
Why not?
Well, it raises concerns about transparency and possible conflicts of interest.
It sure does.
And there's another crucial point the YouTube commentary highlights.
Okay.
There doesn't seem to be any congressional mandate for this Doge initiative.
So it's basically operating outside the usual checks and balances.
It appears that way.
Wow, that's unusual.
It is.
So we've got this interesting situation.
Yeah.
The public wants a more efficient government.
They want to see results, maybe even some tax savings.
Exactly.
But at the same time, there are serious concerns about how this is all happening, the methods being used,
Right.
the lack of accountability.
And the role of this young hacker with a questionable past.
Exactly.
So it really comes down to this. Is it worth sacrificing transparency and accountability for the sake of efficiency?
It's a tough question. And it's one that all of us need to think about.
What are we willing to give up in order to modernize our government for this new AI age?
What are the potential downsides?
What could go wrong?
And how do we make sure that we don't end up with unintended consequences?
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
And it's something that deserves our careful consideration.
Absolutely.
So I want to leave you with this thought. The idea of streamlining government for the AI age is appealing, but what are the potential trade-offs? What are the hidden costs?
What unforeseen consequences might we face?
And how do we ensure that the drive for innovation doesn't undermine the safeguards that are essential for a functioning democracy?
It's something we all need to be aware of.
Absolutely.
We need to be informed and engaged in this conversation.
Because ultimately, the future of our government is at stake.
I couldn't agree more.
All right. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure.